Welcome back to another episode of the Weekly InSalt. My name is Wade, and I'm joined with my co-host Laura. Oh, and you just gotta unmute people. You're falling apart over here, man. And you can fade the music out too. We don't need that anymore. Ches is having a rough morning. He's covering for Kurt, who is currently on vacation for his birthday. He finally
Happy
turned
birthday, Kurt.
21.
Oh, yeah. How many times now?
3 or 4.
3 or 4,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to start off the show. I'll introduce you guys first. From Maven Cinemas, we have Dvorah and Joe. And you two are the owners, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Happy to have you here. I know that you've
Excited to be
done
here.
some other podcasts, and you were referred to us by I think it was American Forked
Yes, it was American
podcast.
Forked.
Yeah.
Jeff
And
over there.
We're excited to have you too. Tons to talk about.
Yes.
But sad news for baseball fans to start off the show. The Oakland A's will not be coming to Salt Lake City.
Bummer.
Yeah. They went to Sacramento, and not a lot of people are happy about
Yeah, I'm
that.
not happy at all.
Now the Bees get to play in Daybreak, so we'll get to see them out there in the new stadium at least. I don't know if you guys are sports fans or not, but
Vaguely, barely, on the outer peripheral.
I'm sure that there are a lot of issues with playing sports, live sports at a movie theater, right?
Yeah.
Like licensing.
Yeah.
Always comes down to the licensing, the rights for it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yep. We had this conversation around the Super Bowl time.
So give us a little history. Like why buy a theater, you know?
That is a great
A
question.
movie theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've worked in either live theater or movie theaters for a long time,
Mhm.
most of my career. And we love films, we love storytelling. And I always, 20 years or so, have had kind of the dream of eventually owning a little small town community movie theater and turning it into a retro theater where we showed old movies. Those little theaters, there used to be one in every community. Every community had the little 1-screen or 2-screen cinema, and a lot of them are gone. They get torn down, they get converted into other things. So the idea of being able to like preserve and save one of these small theaters and show movies that are nostalgic and connect with people is something that we've wanted to do for a long time.
Yeah, and what's been interesting is that, you know, Joe especially, I worked a little in some movie theater venues with him, but yeah, Joe worked in quite a bit of movie theater venues and became really adept at all the operations, running all the equipment, worked for a small chain in New England and was the tech guy for all of their locations, and was there during that final chapter of 35 millimeter film going out and that beginning chapter of digital projectors coming in. And so that was definitely the time when that dream was born. And he was anticipating we'd see a shift in the way that we view content and the way that we, you know, change the movie-going experience with those adaptations. But we always talked about it being this kind of like third act chapter of our lives. We both were over at the Hale Center Theater in Orem. I'm still there as the costume shop manager.
Oh, fun.
But about a year ago from right now, Joe was feeling like, you know, maybe I want to pursue this a little sooner. So we stumbled across the old sticky shoe in American Fork. It was for sale. Being theater people, we were like, well, we don't really have the money to buy a building. So we did spend the summer trying to see if we could make it happen. But of course, by the end of the summer, we were kind of accepting what we already knew when we first discovered, which was, well, we can't buy this building.
Yeah.
But we did kind of seek out, we did some detective work, sought out the email address of the owners at the time and said, hey, this is this crazy idea we have. And we want to know, are we right? Would people come and watch great classics on a big screen again? So we were really fortunate. They took a chance on us and let us do a short lease. And so we've been doing it for 6 months now, and we've just really been loving it. We've received a lot of positive feedback and really great, you know, ideas for the different kinds of titles and events that we can do. And we're always trying to find new ways to make sure that everyone in the community can be involved. That's one of the things we believe is that you've got 100 years of cinema history. There is something for everybody.
Was it scary?
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Are
Is
you
it
kidding?
still
It's
scary?
still
Yeah, still
scary.
scary, yeah.
It is still terrifying.
Yeah.
It's definitely me working my job so we can like pay for life, and Joe literally living at this movie theater to do this dream we have, and we definitely need it to grow a little more. But it's also so heartening to see something grow from a dream I've watched Joe have for a couple decades, and be able to do something that makes him happy and have it make so many people in the community happy. That was just really cool to see it go from watching it make one person happy to many people happy. That's
and I think there's a lot of nostalgia with those places too, because I think a lot of people grew up in theaters like that.
Yes.
I mean, I remember the dollar theater back in the day that kind of had that vibe, and those are pretty much all gone at this point. It's not a good business model to sustain yourself with these days.
Yeah, we still have a few people reach out that are like, "Oh, your prices, you should be charging $1," and it's like, there's no point.
way.
There's
Point out
a reason why they're
dollar
dying.
theater. I don't know of any dollar theater still
I
in
don't
existence.
either. They were around when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Well, everything goes to subscription platforms almost immediately. I feel like sometimes it's within weeks of an opening date for a new release title. So there's just no point in having a dollar theater. Not to mention, I mean, we all saw the way the economy was changing pre-pandemic, but my heavens, we've all experienced now almost half a decade of post-pandemic. Like there's just no way financially.
No way at all. And I think some movie theaters now have been doing like a monthly package where you can go see like X number of movies per month or something, which I don't know how the subscription-based models got to us. There's got to be something behind it, right?
Right. There's
Somewhere.
got to be some formula, some math that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just it's interesting that for a movie you would even think about doing that, but
It gets people off their couch and
in the theater.
in the theater and not watching the streaming.
Why does it work so great for movies, but I can't go to the gym and I still pay for a membership? You know?
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, $9 for a Tuesday through Saturday, after 6 movie.
Not bad.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, the year before we went to watch Jurassic Park over at one of the bigger box theaters, probably Cinemark, and we spent 50% more than that. I think we spent $15 a person.
$13, $14 a ticket. Yeah.
Because you're having to pay Cinemark and you're having to pay Fathom. That's kind of heading up the event, and so we kind of cut out that middleman, so to speak. Yeah,
and I think big part of movie theater has also been the concessions. That's why you're always like, I don't know if I want to buy the $15 bucket of popcorn, but it's like that's where you got to make your money up somewhere, right?
It is where the profit margin is, and
And who doesn't love movie theater popcorn?
And it's movie theater popcorn. Let's be real. It is. Since starting Maven, I've realized I had never categorized it like this before, but movie theater popcorn is comfort food. It really is. You smell it and you get that in your mouth, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. This
the
is
more butter,
food.
the better.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I can't imagine going to a movie without eating popcorn.
Me either. Or
It's not the
Raisinets.
same.
Those are my two go-tos.
Raisinets.
Raisinets, popcorn, and cola.
Yes.
Who wants fruit with their chocolate?
That's
Hey,
like a 3,000 calorie movie.
It is. It's a high calorie movie, but I agree. I'm the same way. I will go to movies and I'll tell myself I'll be good, and I walk in there and that smell hits me. I'm like, oh, maybe just a little popcorn, and then of course, I can't have a popcorn without a beverage. So then there goes my soda, and then I'm like, well, I don't want to have the salty without the sweet at the end. So there goes the box of candy, and I'm like, okay, I guess my resolve it dissolved immediately.
Yep.
It wasn't there to begin with.
It really wasn't there. Let's be real. The lies we tell ourselves.
So true. So true. Ches, flip back on the website to the list of movies, because I was scrolling down it and I'm like, it's so awesome. It brings me back to my childhood. Right off the bat, Walt Disney's Bambi, the original version.
Drip, drip, drop. Little April showers.
It's Charlie Chaplin, like that. How cool would that be?
Yes.
Go back to the 20s.
Yeah.
It's literally 100 years old. I mean, that movie came out before our movie theater was even open, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's insane to think that that's how film, kind of the infancy of film. And it's like that people were like so stoked to watch that, And, and now we think about CG, and there's probably kids. Well, I'm sure there's tons of kids that have no idea who Charlie Chaplin is.
Probably not.
Probably.
And there's kids that don't even know what regular tapes were, like audio tapes these days.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a quick question going back to when you're talking about the 35 millimeter.
Yes.
Okay, in the movie, in Fight Club, they talk about the cigarette burn in the top corner. Was that actually true deal?
So that's an actual thing, because there was a progression with 35 millimeter projectors. They started out where essentially you would have two projectors and you would have alternate reels. So you would put the first reel on the first projector and that would run, and then you would have to somehow communicate to a projectionist who had never seen the movie when to switch it to the second projector so the movie would continue. And those marks on the screen was a visual cue to the projectionist of when they needed to hit the button to swap it to the second reel. So that little cigarette burn looking thing was a cue to the projectionist to help him transition. From there, they actually went to a platter system, so you'd actually take all of the reels, tape them together into one big massive reel, and it would just play as one full movie. So you wouldn't need somebody there full time, which. For one
Unless
screen
the tape
theater,
broke.
Right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
I've been in
you
movies
had to
that
make
has
sure it was
happened.
done right.
Yeah.
They call it a brain wrap if it got all tangled and messed up and destroyed the film.
Yeah, so it worked great with a 1 or 2 screen theater to have those two projectors and swap back and forth, but imagine like a 16 screen and you're trying to that doesn't work. You'd have to create the platter system so a movie would just play.
Yeah.
What's like the modern day way of projecting a movie now? Is it just all automated basically?
All digital.
It's all digital?
It's completely digital. So in 2000, I think somewhere around 2008, they announced that the whole industry was going digital, and they gave everyone, I think until 2012, I believe, and basically said in 2012, we're 100% digital. So if you want to keep being a movie theater, you need to be 100% digital.
Because imagine the cost savings. If you're having to print multiple copies of your new release on so many rolls of film, send it out, the shipping, everything, versus we're just going to send you a hard drive that we get to reuse over and over and over again for future titles.
Yeah.
So now
Huge
it literally is they send you an internal hard drive, and they have a special system, so you plug it in and it will download onto, essentially it's a media server.
Okay.
It's a very fancy media server with, incredible encryption. That's really the thing that sets it apart.
That's why they give you a hard drive and they have a media server so they can control the encryption.
They actually have something they call keys, and the key is a little digital file, but it basically says you can play this content on this projector with this serial number from this date to this date.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they literally can unlocks, even if you had the hard drive, you can't just play the movie.
Right. Yeah,
it unlocks, the day before.
Yeah.
Right. It unlocks the day before you're supposed to play it, and locks the day after, and you can't play it outside of that.
What do they charge for allowing you to use their movies?
First of all, we're a little unique in Utah. We've discovered doing this. Some laws that were made back in the 50s, back around the time this theater was built, that set us apart from the other 49 states. But typically, you've got kind of the flat rate that they want you to pay. We want our little chunk of money. Usually, it's a few $100s. Yeah. And then we also want a percentage of your ticket sales. Okay. And it can also be whatever is going to be the greatest revenue for the film studio, the owner of the intellectual property.
Yeah. So they do essentially. It's a flat, or it's a percentage with a minimum. So we want to make at least X amount of dollars plus, or
if your ticket
whatever
sales are
percentage
higher.
of the ticket sales, whichever is higher.
Yeah.
And that percentage for new releases fluctuates. So it usually starts out pretty high, and then every week
40,
the movie
50%
is out, it comes down a few percentage points, and then usually settles at
usually around
some
25 to 35.
Oh, okay.
35 is really the number that is like the minimum. So 35 is pretty classic for like where they end up. Utah, though, in the 1950s, when they were creating all the laws, they said, we don't like that. You can't do a percentage with a minimum. You can either do a flat rate or a percentage, but you can't do both. So Utah is unique, and it actually really helps our model.
It's really good for us.
Because
finally, Utah did something right.
Right? Yay, Utah in the 50s.
Because what happens is, obviously, like when we started, we were all flat rate because we had no track record, and they assumed that they were going to make the most money charging us, a pretty standard rate for a movie week, which is Friday to Thursday.
Is that because they didn't have like context? They just see you as like Maven Cinemas, another movie theater, or did they?
Well, it's a track record thing.
What we do is just so unique as well.
Oh, okay.
They're going to maximize their profits,
Yeah.
so they're going to look at it and say, we think charging you $300 from Friday to Thursday is going to be more than charging you a percentage. You're just starting out. There's no record,
and they were right for plenty of titles.
Sure.
For sure.
But
especially
eventually,
our first month.
once we start doing well and show that we're going to make more than than that, then they want to charge us the percentage based.
Because now they can make more money.
Yeah. Exactly, because it makes more. But the nice thing about that is if we choose a movie that isn't popular, we have a movie that 2 people show up to for the week, we're not losing money in the sense that we're not paying $300 to make $18 worth of ticket sales. We're paying 35% of $18. So there's big advantages to our model in Utah. Yeah,
for sure. And Disney pops back and forth. I feel like they usually do flat rate for us, but then they'll have a title like when we did Home Alone, they're like, and that will be percentage based. We have very great faith in what you're going to do for this in December. Yes, for sure.
So that's really interesting. I mean, you could pretty much play any movie there. So then you purposely focus on some of the older movies just because of nostalgia, or is it because there's a higher margin, I guess you could say?
Actually, we've found that the older films actually do better. There's been some exceptions. Scott Pilgrim and La La Land did pretty decent. But for the most part, after the year 2000, they just don't seem to do as well. We've really learned that what we provide obviously is a movie theater going experience, but it's so much more that what we provide is a nostalgia experience. It's this old theater. It smells like an old theater, which I saw as something so bad when we were trying to clean it in September.
Like it smells like an old movie theater.
But we've actually had so many people say, I love that so much. It adds the sensory memory of taking them back in time. And then you've got this old movie. And, for most people, you have some emotional attachment or connection or memory. Like when we watched Lion King, I saw that the first time at the Redwood Drive-In with my family right as my parents were getting divorced. And so I have very specific memories associated with that experience. So when we played that back in November and that first animated sunrise hit the screen with the big, beautiful sound of that vocalist, I was completely transported back to 1994. I mean, there was just, it was impossible to. Yeah, I did. I absolutely did. And I think that everybody deserves to have that kind of experience in their life sometimes, to be transported back. It also winds up being able to bridge generations together. We've had plenty of experiences. We did Last Starfighter. We had a group of parents. There was parents with their group of teenagers, and they were so excited to tell their teenagers about this VHS tape that they watched over and over and over again growing up. And the teens walked out and they're like, wow, those practical effects were pretty cheesy. But, but they still got to have that experience. And we had a grandfather that brought his three grandsons to a bunch of our golden Hollywood classics. And
a lot of the Hitchcock,
and he would come out of those theaters and that's what the cars looked like when I was your age. And that's what life was like when I was your age. And it became this way for him to connect with his grandsons and share something that was challenging for him to do any other way. So
and you know what? I could be totally wrong at this. This is just my opinion, but I get the sense that these days the younger generations are getting less and less worried about preserving that history or even caring about it, right? Because you've got the internet. I don't know. If I want to see what it looked like in 1970, I'll go look at Wikipedia.
I'll Google it when I feel like it. It's there. I don't got to worry about that.
To watch those movies with the practical effects, it's like, to get to where we are now, we had to do that stuff. And some of it was really difficult to pull off, even if it did look cheesy. You watched it back then and you were like, dude, I don't know how they did
movie.
that.
Like, you think about Back to the Future. That was pretty cheesy, but it's one of my favorites.
Yes, it's one of my tops. Yeah, and I think it helps us to appreciate the work that filmmakers can do today when we can see what their predecessors did that helped lay that groundwork that make the film abilities possible today. Yeah,
that's really interesting too, to think about film and then also just the movie theater in general and how the experience has changed there too. I think they're coming out with these new 4D theaters. Have you heard of these?
We have heard.
Have you been to one
all
yet?
The sensory.
I haven't.
Just the versions that they have essentially in theme parks.
Pretty much.
They try. I mean, D-Box is one of those things, which are the seats that rumble while you watch, because that kind of adds that fourth thing. But it's interesting to see when they try to add those, because they always have. 3D is one of those ones that just has a history through film. They bring it back every couple of decades, and it's like, here's this new thing. It's 3D.
That your grandparents did. You just don't know about it.
Except your grandparents watched it.
Their glasses were paper, but they thought they were so cool.
And they had one red, one blue lens.
Yes, exactly. But it was there.
I would love to find a digital version of one of those films and give everyone those red and blue glasses to watch something. I would love to.
That would be fun.
It would just be the perfect take it
and
back.
again, it's not like it's not going to be an amazing movie experience, but to be able to sit there and like experience, this is what people did in, you know, the 70s and whatever, when 3D was the big thing and you had these 2-color glasses. And
because that's not our goal. Our goal isn't to try to compete with new releases. Our goal is to provide an opportunity with older releases that you aren't going to get at home. We've had a lot of feedback of people who say, this was my favorite movie. I have watched it 1,000 times at home, but I'll tell you, seeing it on the big screen, there are so many things I never realized what I was missing on a smaller screen. I mean, films are literally made to be experienced in a movie theater. That's what they're made for. I'm so glad we get to watch them at home too, because you don't want to never see it again. Right. But they're made to be experienced in a movie theater.
The most recent one we went and watched was Die Hard, right?
Die Hard,
yeah. That was so fun. There were so many things that I missed that I didn't, you know, like, oh, that was hilarious.
Yeah, having on the big screen with the 5.1K surround sound.
Yeah, when we're at home, when we're on our couches, we're half watching movies.
Yes.
We're on our phones.
That's
You're
the other
popping
part.
up to do things. You're not focused. But there still is that thing when you're in a movie theater, you feel like you need to be fully focused on the movie. You don't have your phone out. You're not really talking. You shouldn't be talking. But you're focused on what's going on. And you notice, like, that's when you really connect with the story a lot more than half watching something on your couch.
I think the first time anybody went to a movie theater too, you walk in and you're like, whoa, it just seems so cool. And there's like the lights are dim, and then you sit there waiting and waiting and waiting, and then all of a sudden the lights turn off and your only focus is on the screen. It's like solely designed to just capture all of your focus. You know? And you're right, when you're at home, it's easy to say, oh, let me pause it and I'll just check my phone real quick, or you know, go make another bowl of popcorn for the 6th time. That's me usually. But yeah, there's nothing
Swap
like
the
going to
laundry
theater.
out, you know?
I do that. I do that. Oh, let me just change the load over. Yeah, totally.
So what kind of plans do you have moving forward? Or do you have any big events coming up?
You guys, I think the hardest part about where we're at in our chapter right now is that our list of ideas is miles long, and the bandwidth of time and money we have is like 3 inches long. Right? It's like, oh, how can we do all the things we want to do? But like we have some great events coming up.
We always, you always hear in business that you shouldn't try to market to everyone. Like you should have,
it's like business 101.
Yeah, you should have your market and
your niche.
The thing about what we're doing is we can literally play things for everyone. We can make sure we have the little kid,
family friendly,
Disney,
this
family
feels clean
stuff.
and safe.
Yeah, so we can really do the gambit. So it is really hard to like.
Hey, I'm a college kid and I want to watch whatever I feel like. My parents aren't gonna ground me. I'm gonna watch whatever I want.
Yeah, so we focus really hard on making sure we have kind of that broad approach. So the big event recently we just did was the Saturday morning cartoons. So we played Looney Tunes cartoons on the big screen. We teamed up with Stir Cereal to provide unlimited cereal for everyone.
Grand
it was a
opening
pajama
in
party. So
That's so cool.
Yes.
So we had everyone come in their PJs. What was interesting about that is we expected it to be 100% like parents with small kids. Like that's kind of what we anticipated.
Yeah, thought it would be. Yeah.
And there were certainly a group like that. There was certainly a lot of them, but then we had a lot of just like couples that came.
Yeah, including like grandparents that came
Oh,
just
that's
by
so
themselves.
Cool.
It was the cutest, sweetest thing. I was like, these are probably cartoons they watched when they were kids. Like this is probably completely taking them back.
But we had a lot of folks kind of our age that grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons with their parents, and so it was actually we had a number of people that were really excited to come with their
with their now
80-year-old
elderly parents.
We're like, and watch these cartoons that they used to watch with their parents.
Remember when you used to yell at me to do my homework in the mornings?
But now let's like recapture the past.
Oh yeah, totally. Totally. And as you get older, and I didn't believe it when I was young, but my parents were always like, enjoy it now, because when you get older you're gonna regret some things, and I'm like, you're gonna miss things, and I'm like, no, I won't. And then every year I get older, I'm like, damn it, they were right.
Why were they so right?
So I could totally see bringing my parents to the theater to do something like that, because it's like I remember watching these as a kid, and then once you start getting nostalgic, you start remembering things from your past anyway, and then who knows? You probably got some crazy conversations going on during those cartoons, Oh
man, it is so true. We're trying to do that with the Mother's Day lineup. We've been doing a bunch of polls on our stories the last couple of days. We really wanted to try to make sure we kind of cover all the movie genres for our Mother Day lineup. Make sure there's the comedy and the drama and the horror and the family friendly. But we've seen a lot of you've got the mom mom that brings the little kids, but we've also seen a lot of the grown-up child who is bringing their older parent.
Yeah.
Like we just did Harvey during Easter weekend, and there was this gentleman with his elderly mother, and he just held onto her arm the whole time, and they shuffled into their seats, and it just
She was
warmed
just
my
beaming.
heart.
She was beaming to be able to see this movie
cute.
from
He
like
turned to-
her.
He's like, "Are you so excited?" And she's like, "I'm so
Oh,
excited."
how
I was like,
cute.
"Oh my gosh, my heart is just gonna burst right now." But you know, you can do a mommy and me thing for multiple generations
Yeah.
with multiple movie genres. So we're looking to get that lineup set up. Obviously, we are a month away from May 4th.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Big day in
we
movies.
did a poll because, of course, you've got a handful of chains, around a dozen chains in the country are doing the full marathon of all 9 episodes.
Yeah.
So we did try. They didn't give us the rights to that, and our seats might be a little challenging for 24 hours of film. But most theaters are doing the 25th anniversary of episode 1, so we can't get the rights to that because that's been secured by Fathom. So we were like, yeah, but there's plenty of Star Wars. Let's see what the community wants. So it looks like we're kind of settling on episode 3 and 4.
Okay.
We tried to see if people wanted Rogue One in the middle, make it a triple feature, but I think we'll wind up doing the double feature and try to make that a good event. We'll of course bring back the Looney Tunes again. It was just so successful yesterday.
yeah.
We're gonna bring that
we'll
one
have to
back.
do that.
So, and we've got a lot of summer stuff we want to do. We, of course, have to do Jaws on Independence Day
fun, yeah.
and Goofy movie on the last day of school. And we'll do a mini Maven movie club that has a kids pack that will help parents to be able to watch movies all summer long.
Well,
Because you
that's
got to have
cool.
things to do, right? You want
Yeah.
your summer sun things, but you also need to get out of the sun. Get in a
Yeah.
quiet, dark room, be calm and quiet. Although I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of adults that want that with no kids. We've had a lot of adults who are like, can I get a ticket just for me? This sounds amazing. And because one of the other cool things with our model, Disney, after the pandemic, they made a law that, or not a law, a rule, that you can either do their new releases or you can do their older titles, 6 months or older. So I think a lot of the summer kid options that are out there for other theaters, they can't get the Disney titles that we're able to get.
Oh, okay,
So that
yeah.
adds a little
Yeah.
bit of a unique
A little edge for ya.
opportunity.
Mhm.
Yeah, exactly.
Before we go to break, we're pretty much there now. Do you want to give out the address and just?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're on Main Street in American Fork, so it's 120 West Main Street. It's the old Sticky Shoe Theater. So we're there. You can find us, Maven Cinemas, pretty much everywhere. So mavencinemas.com is our website. We're at Maven
Instagram.
Cinemas on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, I think. So
Yeah, you can sign up for our newsletter, so you get
Yeah.
as soon as we know that a company is letting us do a title, we'll tell you. So we'll
And all of our movies play Friday to Thursday. So every Friday, it's a new batch of 8 to 10 movies. So you
Okay.
really
Nice.
need to kind of watch the schedule to
Yeah.
make sure you don't miss a movie you want to see.
I am signing up for your newsletter.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
All right, I got a question on a Disney title.
yeah.
Are you able to do Song of the South?
I will bet you
No.
anything we
No.
cannot. Just because we have the contract, we have learned, just because we have contracts with all the studios, they do still have the right to say no about things. Like we tried to do Pocahontas on National Indigenous People Day, and they said no. And I imagine it's probably for a very similar reason why you couldn't get the rights to that title. And then, but then there's sometimes ones we just literally have no idea why. We tried to do Sandra Bullock's While You Were Sleeping at Christmas, and they said no. And we're like, "Wait, why? It's not an anniversary year. It's
Yeah.
not showing somewhere else. So
they don't
sometimes
give
they
you
just have
any.
reasons.
They don't give you any excuse. They can just say no.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, can we know why? And they're like,
Yeah,
no.
it's their property. We say we want to do this title, and they can say yes or no. But we also have the right as well. If they give us rights that are, or if they give us a fee that's
Terms,
higher than we want to pay. Like we tried to do Heathers and Anne of Green Gable, and we could not believe how much they wanted for the rights for that.
Oh, really?
It was like $1,000 a show for
wow.
one of them, and it was like I think $3,000 for 3 shows with one of them. I forget the numbers, but it was significantly higher.
Doesn't
than
make
any other
math
show. And we were like,
sense.
we
Yeah.
won't earn that. Like we'll just
Yeah.
lose
Yeah.
money on that. We're not at a point where we'd earn that in ticket sales. So
And I think it's worth mentioning that if you're planning to own or open your own movie theater, you have to do the rights thing. You can't.
my
just,
gosh, you can get shut
can't
down
just get
so
people
fast.
in there and play movies off of your
Oh,
Roku.
my goodness.
We have a lot of people that come in and it's like, can I rent the theater
can't
and just
I
bring
just
in a
play a
DVD?
DVD?
No.
It's like, that's like,
we're not a private
can't
place.
do that.
Here.
We're not.
Public
Yeah, we're not a
company.
venue. We're a movie theater.
So our process, like we'll right now we're planning May, so we'll figure out all the movies and the dates we want to do all of the movies, and then we'll send them to all the respective studios, and we wait to hear back, and they'll say yay or nay, or sometimes movies have blackout dates. So it's like, hey, from this date to this date, you can't get this movie, but after this date, you can.
Yeah.
So maybe 10%, 5 to 10% of the movies we asked for are rejected for any number of reasons, and we have to find alternatives.
And we're always sad when that's a title that has been asked for a lot. Like, we tried to do the BBC Pride and Prejudice for Valentine's because that was asked for a lot. We were so sad they said no.
How many seats do you have in the theater?
We have about 300 in the one and then about 265 in the other. It actually used to be one big giant theater. When John Miller opened this back in 1950, he wanted it. He had been opening theaters from the 20s to the 40s, and he wanted this to be his swan song, his greatest theater. And it was. He passed away a few years later, very soon after he opened it. And the family, he named it after his beloved wife, so it was the Coral, and the family hung on to it for almost 3 decades. And then when they did finally sell it, it became Town Cinemas. That's when it became the 2 separate theaters.
Okay. Yeah,
and it was in the 80s that they added the little stage in the theater that has 300 seats. So yeah, it's got just a really cool history. Just a really
It's cool that you get to keep it going, because
we get to be a part of that legacy.
Eventually the building would have just been ripped down, and then all of that history would have you would have to read about it on Wikipedia or something.
I know.
Exactly.
And just make you shed a little tear.
Such a common story for these little movie theaters. So many are going away. So.
I'll tell you, I live in Sugar House, and my heart breaks every time I drive past the Villa Theater. That's now the Rug Gallery, and it's still got the sign out front that says Villa Theater.
Oh, yes.
I'm like, that needed to remain a theater.
Yeah. I know. If they could have hung on just a little longer until we franchise Maven, we would have saved all of them. We would have saved every one of them here in Utah County.
Yeah, I actually have questions around that, but let's take a break, and we'll lead off with that when we're back.
All right.
All right.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
And we're back, the Weekly InSalt episode 313.
313.
See, I did use the number after all.
You did.
We had to do take 2 in the beginning, but that's okay. Dvorah and Joe from Maven Cinemas talking with us about so much stuff on the break that it was almost like one of those things where I'm like, we should have just kept recording.
I know.
But first, Ches has something. You went to Keto's Brewery lately.
I did. I went to Keto's, on Friday, and they have a new limited release IPA coming out.
What is it?
Ooh.
I guess they're going to start doing this limited release IPAs, and this is going to be one of their first ones they've done. It comes out on Wednesday, so the day this podcast is coming out. And it's a very delicious IPA.
What's the name of it?
It's just
they just call it limited release.
Limited release.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So anticlimactic.
It
dude.
is.
I was like,
I thought
I was so stoked for it.
But yeah, so I mean,
Very original.
How much did they pay you for this?
Yeah. Did you get paid?
Yes.
In beer, right?
But it's
In beer.
Maybe that's the problem is I haven't made any money, but you guys have made money. Like, this guy.
0.
You guys are just taking the sponsorships without telling.
yeah. But this beer, you smell it, and you get that very strong IPA hoppy smell. Mm-hmm. But then when you drink it, it's just very crisp, very clean, not hot, not super hoppy. Nice. But it smells like it's going to be. So go out down there and check it out. Get it while it's last. I think there's only 17 barrels.
Oh, wow.
Well, that is pretty limited.
Yeah.
Go fast.
It is.
Wow.
Did you talk to David on Friday?
A little bit, yes.
Okay, he did this then. David, this is your fault. He's the head brew master, right?
Yes, at Keto's.
At Keto's, yeah. Nice. We know him pretty well. But
That's awesome.
Love you, David. We're happy to promote for free anytime you want.
Well, go check him out.
Go check him out, yeah.
Check him out at Keto's or on his podcast at the Taste Masters.
Yep.
Nice.
Oh my gosh, where do we start? Because
I have a question.
Go for it.
All right.
Do you collect old movie posters?
We actually have a collection of movie posters from when we worked for a chain out in New England. And what's kind of sad now, I wish we could have told our younger selves at the time. So I wound up getting a job in Hawaii, and Joe was going to grad school in Hawaii. So we spent almost half a decade there, 2015 to just before 2020. And so we thought, we're going to live in Hawaii forever. And we gave away probably 2/3 2/3 of that collection, thinking it'll be so expensive to, ship this over, and we're gonna be there, and so we're not gonna be able to use all of these. And once we did this, I was like, why did we do that? Obviously we kept the best posters, and they're up in the lobby at Maven Cinemas. Cool. So all the posters you see up there are things that we collected from basically when they were new releases. 2006
to 2015.
Yeah, right in that window.
That's cool.
A lot of original posters that were there. So
some of those go for a lot of money too.
I know, right?
Rare ones.
Yes.
We've got,
I've been worried that
like
Twilight one's going to walk out the door multiple times.
Yeah, it could. Crazy people, crazy
now
fans.
Now I've given them the idea. I better put that away.
If any of our listeners do that, we will find you.
Yes.
Thank you. It's more about the memory now at this point than even the value of it.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah, the history.
One thing we talked about a ton is the rights.
Yeah.
And one thing that totally I didn't even think of but makes sense that Joe said was the rights to play a movie in the theater are totally different than the rights that you need to like rent a movie from a place or like Redbox or
buy it on Google Play
or so they break up those rights into all sorts of things. So theatrical distribution is its own thing, but then to distribute DVDs, to sell toys,
put it on their platform,
to stream it, all of those can be different companies. They can also be the same company, but they exist in different
categories,
kind of realms. So it is interesting sometimes as we try to track down especially older movies to play to kind of figure out who owns the theatrical distribution rights to this film.
So we can pay them for it. Because that's important to us. We want to pay, people for their intellectual property. That's very important to us.
Yeah. So there's some interesting stories just because like back in the day, movies didn't go back to the movie theater.
Yeah,
like once they played there, they were gone.
They got released on VHS or DVD or whatever.
You're gonna watch it at home forever.
Everybody's got it at home. So now we need to play it again.
Yep.
Yeah. So some of those rights to some of those older films have gone. These little small companies have kind of ended up with them. I think the coolest story is actually the theatrical distribution rights to Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Mm-hmm.
So that was not able to be played for a while, and we actually. A guy we work with actually did the legwork to kind of track down where the rights went.
That's cool.
And he ended up finding that it was this kind of random lady. This lady had gone, I believe, if I'm remembering all the details of the story right, she went to an auction and they were auctioning off the rights, the theatrical distribution rights to Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And at the time she bought them, that didn't really
that
mean
valuable.
Anything.
Yeah.
It was more about like, this is kind of a cool thing.
I get to tell this story. Like, hey, isn't this cool?
The bragging rights.
Yeah, the bragging rights.
And then since that time, we've got to a point where lots of old movies go back to the movie theaters. It's a regular thing that happens. So now this lady who bought this kind of novelty thing
lives
back in the day
in California.
Can just license this movie to movie theaters to show Monty Python and the Holy Grail and
just collect the checks.
Collect the check. But it's like not who you would at all think would own that.
That's crazy.
And even by today's like standards, you think about it and you're like, it's just, how did that ever even happen?
I know, like a big distribution company would have never let that go had they ever had the foresight to think that this would happen again.
No, not now.
They're probably
40 years ago.
I bet they contacted her and said, we'll buy it back from you. And she's like, no.
Nah, I'm sitting pretty. I'm good. It's a cool life for me. I got this.
We'll give you like a couple million for it now.
For my kids.
Yeah, totally.
Or you just keep getting that residual, too. And then put that in your will to pass it on to your kids.
Who's sad about that? Residuals are a way to live for a lot of people.
Yeah. Sometimes for the smaller companies, just tracking down those rights can be a process. Like we've had that with smaller independent stuff where we want to do the movie.
Gamers Dorkness Rising. We just did a fun
I
D&D
saw
event.
that.
Yeah, we were able to find them fine.
But it took months just to we actually
some time.
scheduled it and had to cancel it.
They
schedule it again.
Yeah, no,
but we got them
They were
eventually.
really great. Yeah,
they were fun.
But we've had to so if a small company makes a movie and they put it out and then they go under. Where do the rights go?
Yeah,
and that's
true.
sometimes you look it up and you're like, okay, this company made that movie, and you call their number and you email them and they've gone out of business, and you're like, how it's
how
detective
do you
work.
find it?
You have to literally
Yeah.
do detective work to be like, where did this go.
Was there like some investor when they went under that now by default has the rights to it or something?
Yeah. Did it get sold?
You have to figure that out.
Sometimes we'll like track down that like their entire library got sold to a company except for this one title for some reason.
Yes, we've had that happen. We had that happen with an English teacher that wanted to show a Holocaust movie. It was a foreign film, and it was like, oh my goodness,
Life
it was
is Beautiful.
Lot. Yeah.
So Life is Beautiful.
A lot of detective work to get that for that class.
It's a movie that you can still buy and stream and all of that, but like tracking down who owned the theatrical distribution rights took some time. Impossible.
Yeah. Well, I hope you created a library because at some point
we are creating a library actually, and and we are just fascinated by the ones. I mean, we found out that the first Terminator is owned by a very teeny tiny company. Like, who would have thought that? Yeah. It's such a huge franchise now. People debate back and forth, which ones they like, but I mean, there was one as recently as 3-4 years ago. So yeah, it's just fascinating to discover all of these things as we navigate through.
So one thing I did want to ask, I'm sure somebody out there is curious about this, is the movie theater your full-time jobs?
That's a really good question. Yes. For Joe, it is his literal life.
Yeah.
It is my 2 full-time jobs.
It is like 3 full-time jobs. It's just what he does all the time. It is not my full-time job. So we actually were both working at the Hale Center Theater in Orem before we did this. So I'm the costume shop manager there. So we decided it made the most sense since Joe knew the most in-depth information about operations and using all the technical equipment. He's the one that is there literally way more than full-time. There is a cot up in the projection booth. We do have clothes there. We do have toiletries there. Yeah. But I still work full time for the Hale Center Theater in Orem.
That's cool. But at least Joe, you get to do that. It's got to be fulfilling a dream of yours at some point, right?
I mean, it absolutely is. It's hard work, and which is great. But I love it. Like for me, Dvorah and I have both worked in either live or movie theaters our whole career, and I love storytelling for one, but I also love that like people go to the movies to have fun. So the fact that I can, provide that experience for people, that they can come to a place and have an enjoyable time is really fulfilling for me. Yeah. So I love that.
It's probably one of the most all-inclusive art forms that we've created, because you've got, we love dance, we love art, we love fashion, we love the written word, but movies take it all and they put it all together. You've got music, and you wind up just feeling probably the most heightened version probably of just about any art form out there. So we love being able to do that. We feel like storytelling is so crucial for our communities. Like Joe said, it's important to have the entertainment, and it also does provide, I think, even deeper things for us than we even sometimes might be conscious of while we're experiencing a film. Being inspired, feeling, like we're healing, wanting to reach out to somebody else, maybe wanting to be a better version of ourselves. Storytelling has the power to do that. So we love putting that in the community.
I was just thinking while you were talking about that, the difference between like a movie theater and live theater. I'm like, I bet it's almost easier to do a movie theater because you don't have to deal with props and you don't have to the performance is live, so there's always hiccups, But then you think about the licensing, and I'm sure there's maintenance, like the right speaker isn't working or something. You got to go figure that out.
The popper broke, the plumbing broke. Like we've gone through those things.
Oh no.
What was the one thing when you got the theater that you didn't think you'd ever have to worry about owning a movie theater? You're like, well, I didn't think this would happen today.
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm not sure there was certainly, like, I've managed a lot of theaters. The operations of it, I know plenty.
Yeah,
for me, it was like some of this like small business owner stuff, like having to do payroll for employees or having to do the taxes side. Like, that's not stuff you do.
But we also acknowledged wasn't necessarily our forte. I don't think it is our forte yet either. Yeah. But we're working on it.
I don't think anybody likes doing taxes.
No. Or, cleaning the theaters. I know that was probably the hardest thing for me. I was like, oh, this is what I did when I was 16 at Burger King. Am I really back to like sweeping floors and cleaning toilets? But, it's the things you do. That's what you do, right? That's what makes it more satisfying, is that you're doing something that either you thought you moved past or just is maybe not fun or comfortable. When you put in those efforts, you're like, this is something, like, we are doing this. And
you're doing it for yourself. It's not like you're getting paid minimum wage to sweep the
We're not getting paid anything. Our 2 high school students get paid more than we do.
Do you know what? Isn't that such a funny, like, circle of life thing where You start your career sweeping out movie theaters for minimum wage, and you're so mad about it because you're young and you're like,
why am I not a manager yet? I should be a manager now.
And then you buy a movie theater and you do the same thing for even less.
Or you pay your teenagers to do it.
Yes, exactly. It really is more for emotional fulfillment. Obviously, we won't be able to run like that forever.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
But we're still really pleased with how it's progressing and where it's heading.
I think one of the things that I didn't expect to have to do as much as we're doing is actually social media.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
we joke all of the time about how 6 months ago, before we opened this, I had Facebook forever.
Yeah.
I didn't really do anything on Facebook or Instagram. I would check on things. We have done more social media in the last
That's a
6
full-time
months.
job.
Exactly.
Probably the last 6 years combined.
Than forever. So, and we've
Yes.
learned a ton.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I can edit a video. I won't claim that they're good, but I can do it. I can do that. All of my teenage nieces are cringing right now, like, that Aunt Dvorah, she's so embarrassing.
I know that's the thing that we've always struggled with the podcast is social media because it is a full-time job. And I have accounts, but I just use it to go see what's happening. I don't ever post anything. I don't really want to. I don't want to be in charge of all that. But then you really do literally have to hire somebody full time, or somebody has to commit to it.
Do that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we tag team it, but it feels like that's what we're always doing. Gotta make sure we have posts. Gotta make sure we're responding. Gotta make sure we're sharing. Yeah.
I always feel bad because I feel like we're at that point where we're growing, and it's growing slowly, but it is growing. So we're at that breaking point where we've grown to the point where the work is just so much, but we're not quite at the financial ability to hire a key holder and a marketer, because I feel like those would be the next two people that we'd want to pay even before ourselves, just to kind of help delegate and make sure we're really successful at navigating all of that and doing it well. Because I think the thing I feel the worst about is that once in a while something does slip through the cracks. There's some message that we do that we need to touch base with each other and make sure we give the right response, or it's just a question that's kind of hard to answer for us where we're at. And then it just winds up kind of backburnering, and then we never wind up responding. I don't feel like we do a lot come of that, but
it happens. It's hard to keep up with how fast-paced things are today. I mean, even major news stories come and go in one day. And you're like, everybody's like, I can't believe that happened.
I don't
Did
care.
you see it? And the next day you're like,
I know,
man,
that's old news. So the pacing is hard with just the two of us. I feel like we're at that point where we're not quite able to pay someone to help, but we really need to. So we're looking forward to getting to that point. We've got some things we're hoping to do this summer to help us get to that point. We're about to add some merchandise. We're about to make it so you can order our concessions on DoorDash.
Oh, cool.
So when you just need to have a stay-at-home movie night, because we all need that and deserve that, you can still have the movie concessions.
Yeah.
And we're trying to get our membership rolling. We found a little bug in the programming of our ticket sales software that we picked, and it's been slowing us down on getting that out. But yeah, trying to get other things going so that we'll be able to reach that point at some point.
I'm going to say this on the air because I just had the idea. I don't want to forget. I think I have a really awesome idea, but I'm not going to say it on the air. I'll talk about it afterwards.
You got it. Stay tuned.
Yeah,
I have
more
an
to come
idea
on
too.
that maybe.
Yeah.
I have one too, off air.
Sign up for that newsletter. You'll hear about it someday.
So are you planning on doing more collaborations like you did for the pajama and cereal
we
thing?
love doing collaborations. We did a collaboration with Box Bites and did a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle
my God.
Pizza party.
How cool is
the
that?
1991.
Yes.
Dude, I know a fully grown man who would have paid hundreds of dollars to come to
Is he in this room?
Sign up for the newsletter.
Yeah, maybe you too.
We're getting ready to plan another one.
That would be so
in about
cool.
a month.
Yeah.
Yes. And we did a collaboration with Cuddles Cat Lounge where we had the Cat Video Fest, and then we gave a proceed of the tickets to them for cat adoptions, and we've done SOS, something on the spectrum.
Success on the
Thank
spectrum.
you. Success on the Spectrum. We did Super Mario Brothers and had a sensory-friendly event with them and did that collaboration. We have done a good handful of them. We did one on human trafficking, and we did that collaboration back in January, I want to say. We just think it's so important to stay connected to the other small businesses in our community. The point of our business is to create a space for the community to to come and be connected.
Yeah.
And, I mean, whenever you watch a movie, that is what's happening. Even if you don't talk to anyone else in the theater, you're having a communal experience. You're having a shared experience.
Yeah, we even had people say yesterday with the Looney Tunes things that there's something about being in a room with people laughing with you. Like, it
responding to the
makes
same
it
things
so
you're
much
like,
funnier.
we're experiencing the same emotions together. Yeah.
You instantly have something in common because you came there to watch this. Nobody else is showing that around here, so you found it, and you're all there together and enjoying all of this old nostalgia. It's almost like you're connected on a different level than if you just show up to a regular movie theater watching movies.
Definitely.
Yeah, or respond to a post. I feel like we're in this day and age where we're equally more connected than ever and more separated than ever. I know this is a topic millions of people have talked about for years now, but I feel like that's one of our goals is to make it so, because yes, we love watching things at home. Everybody's gonna love being in their pajamas, although they were in pajamas at our theater yesterday. But being in your pajamas at home and being comfy, cozy, and being able to pause when you want to go to the bathroom, and that will never go away. We all love that. Yeah. But you also have to have those opportunities to feel connected. We need to be connected. We're a species that craves that.
I've seen the meme or whatever, talking about, kids these days will never know the horror of having the sibling yell, "It's back on," as you're as you're running across the living room.
Commercial break is over.
Yeah.
And you don't want to miss the cartoon. Yes.
Going to the bathroom, you gotta yell. Yell at me when it comes back. It's back. You're like, oh no.
I remember explaining to my nieces, I'm like, it was a thing where the volume on your TV literally, like the studios did it so that the volume went up because they knew you would get up and leave during the commercial breaks. And so it literally went up a couple notches.
That is definitely a thing.
And then went back down.
Yeah.
The things that don't. Actually, yesterday we had a mom that thought it was the sweetest thing. Her 4 daughters sitting watching cartoons. They walked in and they said, "Where's our seats?" And their mom said, "You get to pick wherever you want to sit." And they're like, "What? We don't have assigned seats." They were like wigging out. They even put it on social media. They put it in a story that they tagged us in. They're like,
so funny.
"Guess what? We got to pick our own
anywhere."
seats." That's funny. Their mom was like, "I remember when we thought it was so cool, they became reserved when it went the other way." Like, ooh, my seat is reserved.
Back to the days when I was standing in line for when Aliens came out. And you got to go to the movie theater hours before.
Yeah, and if you really wanted to see Star Wars, you got there like hours early. You were the first one in line if you wanted to get that perfect seat.
We would have meetings when I worked for the chain in New England. We would have meetings before any of those big screenings talking about how we were going to lay out the lobby lines and keep everything organized because you had to maintain their spots. And we would do, like I remember we did one of the Harry Potters, one of the last ones. We had 3,300 people show up to fill 16 different screens at midnight for the same show. And the line literally went out our door and like 3/4 of the way around the building of
and you
people
want them
waiting
to buy
get in.
concessions, so you have to make it efficient and a positive experience. So it's a big thing.
Yeah, route the line past all the concession stands. And
so we remember those days. So it's fun to try to recreate that, at least to a certain extent.
It's just funny to be in that flipped moment where they're
I
just
know.
like mind blown. Any seat in the theater.
Yes.
Where's our seat at? You get to pick.
What? Yes. You get to pick wherever we want to sit.
It's an interesting thing to think about. Like, to them, it's so freeing.
Yeah.
When we were so excited to get assigned seats.
Yeah,
so they're growing up in like this restrictive world that we didn't even think about.
I don't got to worry.
I do remember that, like when I was a kid, one of the things that you always did at least once in your life was you found a movie that you really wanted to see and you sat on the front row. Yes. The reason you only did it once is because you realized that it sucked.
There's a reason. You don't want to crane your neck.
So
now give me the back row.
Yep.
Yes.
And then you tried the back row.
If you want the true movie theater experience, Dvorah and I have done this.
This story.
So for one of I think it was the first Avengers movie.
It was the first Avengers.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's space behind the screen. Where the speakers and stuff are. But if you've ever looked at a movie theater screen closely, they're perforated. There's lots of little dots in them.
Tons of teeny tiny holes.
So you can actually sit behind the screen and see the movie.
I've done that.
So we
Really?
You've done that?
Well, in a way, yes.
Yeah.
So I used to work for a company that sorry to cut in on this, but I worked for a company that we did like school carnivals, company parties, and we had one of the big inflatable movie screens.
Aww.
So I'd sit back there, just in case anything happened with the projector or whatever, because we'd set up the projector behind it and project from the rear to the front.
Yep.
So I'd sit back there, and it's movies reversed.
Yep. Yeah, we snuck a couple of little banana chairs back there.
It was like video game rock.
Sat back there and watched the movie from behind the screen.
And I think it was like the 8th time we watched it.
Oh, that's funny.
That is cool.
We were like, oh man, we are old. We were newlyweds when the first Iron Man came out, and like we were talking about the difference in the projectors now from then. Joe, his favorite part of working for this movie theater chain was that he had to run every movie down before it came out to make sure it had been built correctly and things weren't backwards or in the wrong order. And so poor Joe had to watch it. It was his favorite thing. He loved it so much. It would be okay, I'm going to watch this movie starting at midnight when the patrons leave. I'll see it at 3 a.m. But when the Marvel films started coming out, I would make sure I'd sneak in with him. I didn't have to sneak in. He was a manager, but I was technically sneaking in. But yeah, we got those canisters, I don't know, 5 days before that first MCU film came out, and it was locked. They didn't always come locked, but that one came locked. And so we figured out the code, and we built that a few days early, and man, we've been big fans of the MCU ever since.
That's so cool though, to be able to. I'm sure that was great. You got to watch all of
every Marvel film. We'd watch it almost a week before it came out.
The best part about having the rundown movies was the fact it was paid. So it was like it was work. So I would get paid to watch the movie because when you're building the reels, you have to. Like I said, you tape them together.
You literally tape them together.
If if you mess up, you put them backwards. You put reels out of order. There's lots of things you could do to mess it up.
Yeah,
and
that's not something you can really fix easily.
No.
So the studios
you don't want to refund all those tickets on an opening day.
Usually they made you just sit there for 20 minutes.
So they would request it. It was literally a quality check thing of sitting and watching all. So I would sometimes watch 2 or 3 movies in a row on Thursday night just to make sure they were all ready, get paid for them. In fact, when I was in college, I'd just bring my homework. So I'd be in the movie theater, doing homework while movies are playing.
Did you ever hold that against any of your friends if they're like, tell us what happened in the movie? You're like, I could literally spoil the whole movie for you. If they're like, don't talk about it, you're like, I know
I can ruin your life right now.
I grew up in a family where spoilers were just unacceptable.
I don't think Joe would have ever done that.
I don't think so either.
Even if somebody begged me, I don't think I could ever spoil.
And I think you respect the idea of the movie theater too much. That's the whole point.
I mean, obviously, I think we've shown we care about what that experience is for people. So for sure. But it's so, we were talking about, again, going back even further in time with these projectors and how they worked from earlier in the episode. We had, actually, I think it was our health inspector when he came to make sure we had everything clean and ready to open. He had been to see a film in the mid to late 60s in this theater that we're running now. And he said it was clearly a bad day for that projectionist. He's like, I don't know what was happening.
Was wrong. One after the other.
He said it took him almost 4 hours to get through this movie. His dad kept having to go up to the booth and be like, excuse me, you're playing like the second reel again. And this is clearly way later in the movie. And this poor projectionist, oh man, it took a long time to get through that movie that day. So it really has been wild to get to experience this history and this progression.
Was it already all digital when you got the theater?
Yeah.
So you didn't get any sweet old movie theater stuff?
No, since 2012, like I said, any theater that's operated since then, it was required. Some theaters, like literally at the time they did that conversion, you could probably have gotten 35 millimeter projectors for free.
For almost nothing.
They just find like a closet filled with canisters.
We actually did find, we found a box with a bunch of old trailers, 35 millimeter trailers. We have that one thing, and then we've asked the owner of the building, the current owner, if we could get our hands. There is one of the old projectors in a shed out back, literally just like laying on the ground in a puddle, rusting. Geez. It breaks my heart. I have been saying for months, I wish if we could get him to pull that out, and we'd never get it running again, but if we could just like put it together enough to put on in
display.
The lobby, how cool would that be?
That would be cool.
That would be so cool. Joe, actually, his hometown is in a teeny tiny place in the middle of Maine, nowhere Maine. And when this happened, the little movie theater chain, I would even maybe claim it was where you fell in love with the movie theater going experience. It was this little tiny dollar theater, I think, in Norway, Maine. And so when this mandate came from the production companies, they basically did we're so sorry, community, we just have to shut. We just don't have the money for this new projector. And there was some guy that everyone knew was on the edge of town that was the millionaire that lived out there, to have his quiet chapel chapter of life. And he loved going to that movie theater so much, he literally helped make sure that they didn't shut down.
I got you.
And could get the digital projector
that's
so
cool.
they could convert for their movie theater.
Yeah.
So
a lot of people ask, because we're showing the old movies, like, will we ever show 35 millimeter? I would love to.
Oh
like,
my gosh,
that would be a
if we
great
could get our hands on
experience.
one.
I'm a projectionist. The problem is, like, getting the projector is fine.
Yeah.
These prints of 35 millimeter film are what's really expensive now. They don't exist anymore.
Rare.
Every time you play one, it
wears it
degrades
out.
a little bit.
Yeah.
Even if you treat it really well, it's going to degrade just a little bit. So they all have limited lifespans. So it's actually, to get a 35 millimeter film is expensive. A lot of times
You have
it
to pay
costs a lot to
insurance.
rent. Yeah, you got to pay for special shipping. You got to pay for insurance on the print itself. You got to pay for a trained, like, licensed projectionist to run it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
it would be fun to do, but it would be
Not
really
very
expensive
practical.
to do.
Yeah, and I wonder how hard it is to take a digital movie and put it back into 35. Would it even be possible?
Oh,
Possible, yes.
It
Yeah.
has to
Expensive,
exist
probably.
somewhere.
incredibly expensive. Yeah.
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 So I was wondering, so like thinking about AMI, for example, music. I am so angry that I can't buy and play a Beatles song.
Oh yeah, like the bar, right? Because the licensing,
you
they don't want to pay the
cannot
money.
get a Beatles song
Yeah.
on AMI. Are there any movies? And one pops in my head, like any of the Elvis films. Is there anything that you cannot get?
We have not done an Elvis
There-
film yet, as you
there's-
say that. That's a tragedy.
There definitely are, and there's various reasons for them, and we don't always even know what the reasons are. A lot of times, even the people we deal with at the studios don't necessarily know. They just know they have a list of what they can and can't do.
Yeah.
But yeah, there definitely are ones that we just can't get.
We also have the ones where, for whatever reason, they don't have it on DCP format, so we can't do the drive and ingest it. So we do have the option with a few titles here or there. We can pay for the rights, but we do have to play it on a Blu-ray, which actually Joe has learned, because you know all the technical jargon better than me, but it's essentially the same quality as the hard drive. We don't do that very often. It's maybe just a couple times a month if it's a title that we're like, okay, we don't love the Blu-ray part, but we want to show this title. But
Yeah.
we don't like doing that.
We only
wanna
do
show
it when we can't get it in the new digital
So once in a
form.
while that happens, where they're like, sorry, we just don't have this on DCP, but we will charge you the rights and you can show it this other way. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm gonna nerd out a little bit with you, Joe, for a second.
Do
What's
it.
the like standard resolution of the projector in a theater?
So standard, when it first came out, they called it 2K.
Okay.
But resolution-wise, so the other variation of that is there's two formats. There's a wider format, widescreen one, and then a narrower one, which is called either flat or scope. So these two formats, a flat film, which was, a lot of classic stuff is in that flat format. Let me see if I get the numbers right. It's 1998 by 1080.
Okay. So it's kind of 1080p?
Essentially, because
Yeah.
1920 by 1080 would be
1080p.
HD, yeah. And so it's 1998. The other one is 2024 pixels by 1080. And that's 2K. So that's where they get the two.
I see.
And then they do also have 4K, which
4K.
is becoming more and more standard, and that just doubles those numbers, so it's 4096 or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's twice the
I
resolution.
I
so.
think I've heard rumors of 8K TVs lately, but
Wow.
at what point do you need to stop?
Yeah.
The other interesting factor about that is it's all about distance. The further you are from the screen, there's a distance, I forget what it is, but depending on the size of the screen, there's a ratio distance where visually you can't tell the difference between a 2K and a 4K print anyways, because you're sitting far enough back that your eyes can't see that level of detail.
Yeah.
So they will probably keep going with it, but
Yeah.
the point is we're reaching the capacity where you visually can't tell the difference between.
You just look like
one
you're
or the
looking out a
other.
window
Yeah.
at this point. Yeah.
Yep.
If you want to do an 8K one and sit 2 feet away, you would notice the difference. But what kind of viewing experience is that?
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Very
I really want to
neck
absorb all the blades of grass.
Yeah.
in the shot.
Exactly.
Well,
And we already have feedback that people see more than they do on their home TV. So we already got a good thing going.
Well, what's the address again if anybody wants to drop by?
So it is 120 West Main Street in American Fork, right on Main Street, just off I-15.
Yep,
It's a
you
big
can't
blue
miss
building
it.
with
Yep,
a
the previous owners
flashing
painted
light
it
marquee.
bright blue and yellow. Yep, it's got the old marquee. It's fallen apart, but yeah, it's got all its charm, and it's got a little mannequin out in the old box office that freaks a lot of people out.
That's awesome.
He may or may not be borrowing a costume from the Hale costume shop from an old 80s show, so that he looks like he's got the old bellhop look going on.
I assume all social media accounts are Maven Cinemas.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
TikTok,
Go check them
Facebook,
out.
and
Maven
Instagram.
Cinemas. Maven.
Yep, sign
Which
up
we
for
love.
our
We could ask like
newsletter.
what the name means. A maven is either an expert or a connoisseur. So we like the idea that we're all film connoisseurs. We all enjoy film, which
Yeah.
is why we go to
Oh, I
watch
like
these
that.
old
Yeah.
classic movies. So
Yeah. Even if
we
your
are all
preferred
film
library is small,
mavens.
yeah, it's still your titles that you love.
Yeah, at least take your kids out there and let them pick their seat, all right? You don't always have to.
a brand new experience.
Yeah.
You know, the only theater in town doing this, folks.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for taking
Yes,
time out of
thank
your
you.
Sunday to
Great
talk
having
with
Thank
us.
you for having us.
This has been your weekly insult. Dude, how fun.
That was fun.
Oh my gosh, we love it. We love it so much.
There's so much. Like, seriously, you guys got to come see Titanic.
Yes, Titanic on the day.
Yeah, that is really cool.